find out about the UFOs, and they said they saw things that you wouldn't believe.
Oh, what the hell? Hang on. Dude, there's something weird flying around up there. Oh, there it is. There it is. What the hell is that?
Terry Lovelace was a United States Air Force medic when a UFO appeared over northwest Arkansas in the summer of 1977. 3 lights, then 1 triangle hanging silent above his tent.
So the lights are, I don't know, a few hundred yards away, and then suddenly, boom, it's over our camp and just hovers there. We were looking right up at the thing. It's as big as a city block. We could hear it humming. Now, you'd think we'd start to panic, but I distinctly recall that while it floated over our campsite, I felt this feeling of calm wash over me. It was a feeling that I'd say was very close to sedation. I don't know how else to describe it. I felt absolutely at ease, just peaceful, calm.
What happened over the next 6 hours, he did not tell anyone for 40 years. Not his closest friends, not his wife. From the object buried in his leg, to the agents who made him sign papers he was not allowed to read, to the woman who walked into his living room in 2017 and told him exactly what his government would do if he kept talking. And the object caught on camera over open farmland that nobody was supposed to see.
You know, this is a little bit hard to verbalize, but it was more of a vibe. There was a vibe to it that was just spooky.
And I asked Toby, I said, Toby, man, what the hell are these kids doing out here in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night? And he said, Terry, man, those ain't no little kids. Look at them. They're not human beings. And he said, don't you remember? They took us and they hurt us. And when he said that, it was just like a smack in the face. And I came out of it, and I was absolutely terrified.
Holy heck, that can't be aircraft. There actually is a large unidentified object.
The X-ray. In 2012, Terry Lovelace had a settled life. He served 6 years in the United States Air Force as a medic through the 1970s. After that, he went to law school and worked as an assistant attorney general, including postings in Vermont and American Samoa. He had a family and a career built on being a man whose word held up under oath. That year, a sharp pain went through his right leg. His balance went out from under him, and he fell. He went into a doctor expecting a torn muscle or a hairline fracture. The doctor came back with the film and did not look like a man about to deliver routine news. There was something inside the leg. A small square object, roughly the size of a fingernail, sitting deep in the tissue. 2 thin wires trailed out of it. Clean edges. Structure. It looked manufactured. The doctor asked the obvious questions. Any accident? Any surgery on that leg? Any shrapnel? No to all of it. And then Lovelace remembered June of 1977. He had spent 35 years not remembering it on purpose, and he had always given himself the same reason. He had no evidence, and nobody believes a word of this without something they can hold. Now there was something on a screen in a doctor's office. 4 days at Devil's Den. June 1977. Lovelace and another medic, a close friend he would later refer to only as Toby to protect the man's family, take 4 days of leave from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. They drive 6 hours south into the Ozarks of northwest Arkansas to Devil's Den State Park. They are not looking for picnic tables and a bathroom block. They want dark sky. They pick a spot deep inside a restricted section of the park, well away from anyone else. The first night they eat, drink beer, and sit by the fire. Around 9, Toby stops mid-sentence and tells Terry to listen. Terry says he does not hear anything. Toby says exactly. The insects had stopped. No crickets, no frogs, no wind moving in the trees. Anyone who has spent a June night in that forest knows how loud it is. It had gone completely silent. Then Toby saw the lights, 3 of them. Faint, high, holding formation. They brightened. They rotated around a shared axis. Then they accelerated toward the camp in a way that made speed impossible to judge, because there was nothing up there to measure them against. Terry made a joke that the thing was going to sail right over the top of them. It did. The 3 points closed into one object and stopped directly above the campsite. Lovelace described it as wide as a city block. It blacked out entire fields of stars. It hummed at a frequency he felt in his chest. Here is the part Lovelace himself admitted makes no sense. Neither man panicked. He described what came over him as close to sedation, a calm that did not come from inside him. A white beam dropped out of the craft and lit the campsite brighter than daylight for about 30 seconds. Then darkness. Then a thin blue line swept the site, slow and methodical, over the tent, over the fire, over both men. Then nothing. Toby said the show was over. They went into the tent and fell asleep. 2 trained Air Force medics went to bed under an object the size of a city block. The room. He wakes up somewhere else. He is naked on a floor that feels like cold rubber. His clothes are folded on his chest. The air smells chemical and burns his throat. A low pulse runs through the floor. He cannot move. Not his arms, not his head, not his mouth. His mind is awake inside a body that will not answer him. Somewhere behind him, a woman screams. As his eyes adjust, he realizes how big the space is. A ceiling 5 stories up, a floor the size of a stadium, which is the first detail that breaks the story open, because the craft over the campsite was enormous, but it was not this big. To his right, at least 10 other people lie in the same position. Men, women, children, some moving their eyes in panic, some staring straight up at the ceiling, already done fighting it. Along the left wall, disc-shaped craft sit in a row. Small vehicles the size of golf carts move through the space, carrying figures he first took for children. They were not children. Short, gray-skinned, large black eyes, long arms and thin fingers, moving in a way he described as quick and mechanical, all of them in matching gray flight suits. Then something walked past that stopped him cold. A human being. Beige uniform, orange rank insignia. Not restrained, not naked on a floor. Working. Walking past a room full of paralyzed people the way a technician walks past inventory. There were people up there who were part of the crew. A taller figure came near him next, around 6 feet with chalky pink skin. It stopped and held eye contact, and Lovelace said he felt it reading him, with no way to close a door on any of it. Then he was moving. Gray figures lifted him and carried him down a corridor. Blank wall on one side. On the other, glass tanks, from a foot square up to large enough to hold a grown man. Almost all empty. One held pink fluid and something he first took for a newborn puppy, curled up, eyes closed. As he passed it, it opened its eyes. The corridor ended in a domed room, white, gray, stainless steel. He knew exactly what he was looking at, because he was a medic. A medical examination room. They slid him onto the table, and his first thought was that it was warm, and somebody had warmed it for him. Then he understood why it was warm. 2 more entities entered, around 9 feet tall, elongated, angular, insect-like. He compared them to praying mantises. The gray figures turned him onto his side, and the procedure started at his lower back and worked down into his legs. He screamed, and no sound came out of him. One of the tall ones stopped, tilted its head, and spoke directly inside his skull. He remembered the words as flat and almost impatient. "Why are you screaming? Stop screaming. You know we do not hurt you. You know we take you back." Something tapped his forehead. Everything went black. Radiation burns and 2 men in suits. He came around in the grass near the car, not in the tent. His first reaction was not fear. It was irritation that they had not put him back where they found him. Then, he said, several of them dragged both men across the grass and dropped them into the tent. He passed out again. What woke him was light, green flashes strobing through the fabric. His body ached. Toby was crouched at the tent flap with the flashlight, whispering at him to stay quiet, and Toby had been crying. Terry's watch had stopped at midnight. The clock inside the tent read 3 in the morning. Outside, over the meadow, was an object he described as an office building lying on its side. Small windows, figures moving behind them, and on the ground below it, small figures walking in the open. Then the figures were gone, and the object rose and left without a sound. Toby's face was swollen and badly burned. So was Terry's. Both men were covered in welts. They did not break camp. They abandoned it and drove. Back at Whiteman, Terry's wife took one look at him and drove him to the base clinic. He told the staff about the lights and the burns and nothing else. He left out everything between 9 and 3 because he knew where that conversation ends for an enlisted man in 1977. The burns were not sunburn. Staff ran a Geiger counter over him, and the reading came back consistent with radiation exposure. His clothing was bagged as biohazard material and taken away. 3 nights later, 2 men walked into his hospital room. Dark suits, badges. They identified themselves as agents of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations and asked the nurse to leave. Lovelace was 22, sitting up in bed, looking at a tape recorder on a tray. One of them, a major, read him his rights under Article 31 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That is the military version of the warning you hear before an arrest. They asked him what he saw. He gave them the lights and stopped. And the detail that stayed with him for life was that none of it surprised them. They pressed him on things he had not told them. One got in his face and said he knew both men had seen more than lights. He held the line. Before that week, he had been afraid of the psychiatric ward. Now, he was afraid of a cell. They made him sign a consent to search his home and car, a search already underway before he signed it. They made him sign other documents and would not let him read them. They told him never to speak about it, and they told him he was not to contact Toby again. Not ever. Toby was transferred to a base in Japan. The 2 men never spoke again. The woman in the living room. After the X-ray in 2012, Lovelace stopped keeping it. He gave interviews. He wrote a book, Incident at Devil's Den. Then he did the one thing that could have ended the argument for good. He arranged to have the object cut out of his leg. A surgeon. A date. Whatever that square was, it was about to be sitting in a specimen container under a laboratory light, where testimony stops mattering, and a report either says alloy, or it says nothing unusual at all. It never got there. The warning, he said, did not come from his government. And there is one detail here that Lovelace was not the only person in the house for. A few years earlier, his wife woke in the night and saw a small figure with large eyes at the foot of their bed. A calm voice in her head told her not to be afraid and go back to sleep. She decided it was a dream and never raised it again. In 2017, he fell asleep and came to sitting in his own living room. Across from him was a woman about 4 feet tall with light brown hair. At a glance, a small woman of Asian descent. Then he registered that the hair was a wig. Her lips did not move. He heard her anyway. She told him it was the same hair she always wore, and that he knew that. Then memories arrived that he said he had never had access to before. Being taken at 8 years old. A room aboard a craft that worked like a daycare, where children were handed colored blocks to arrange and small cubes to move without touching them. She was there every time. Her job seemed to be keeping the children calm while other things were done to them. She told him he would not be taken again. Then she told him why she had come. His interviews and his book had alarmed the people she worked for, whom she called her hosts. Those hosts, she said, worked with his government. He did not understand which of his memories mattered, so he could not be trusted to decide what to say. Then she gave him the sequence, in order. First, they would discredit him. Then they would threaten him. And if he kept talking after that, his government would kill him. She also told him the devices were coming out. Lovelace went back and had the leg x-rayed a second time. 2 films, same leg. The first shows a square object with 2 wires running off it. The second shows the wires exactly where they had been and nothing else. No incision, no scar, no entry point anywhere on the leg, and no surgical record. Because the surgery never happened. The appointment he booked to settle this in a laboratory was now an appointment to remove something that was gone. He carried the only physical evidence he had for 40 years. It left him the year he tried to hand it over. What the skeptics actually say. Here is the case against Terry Lovelace, and it is stronger than most people who repeat this story admit. Start with the evidence that walked away. A man announces he is having an alien artifact surgically removed, and the artifact removes itself first. If you set out to design a claim nobody could ever check, that is the shape you would give it. Then take the films apart. Critics who examine them argue the square is not inside the leg at all. It is sitting on the skin. On the lateral view, the chip and the wires are not where they would have to be if something were buried in tissue. There is a precedent, and it belongs to the most famous abductee in America. Whitley Strieber had one of his own implants surgically recovered and sent for analysis. The laboratory came back with one word: cartilage, his own body. Tissue walls off splinters in a membrane as a matter of routine, and that is how you get a small, dense object on a film. Then there is the state of mind. Hypnagogic hallucination, the border between sleeping and waking, produces full body paralysis and a sensed presence in the room. It is not an accusation of lying. It is a normal thing that normal brains do. It also covers a small figure with large eyes at the foot of a bed at 3 in the morning, the most common image in the entire abduction literature. The account also keeps growing. New details surfaced in later interviews, and reviewers of his book note that reconstructed dialogue from 40 years earlier reads like a screenplay. And the one man who could settle it is gone. Toby was never his real name. He died in 2007, which means the only other witness at Devil's Den has been unreachable since before this story went public. So that is the case against him. It is a serious one. Here is what it does not touch. A Geiger counter reading in a base clinic. A uniform in a biohazard bag. 2 OSI agents and an Article 31 warning 3 nights later. Sleep paralysis does not burn a face. It does not register on a radiation meter. And it does not explain why an organization that publicly had no interest in any of this sent 2 men in suits to make sure one medic never spoke to the other again. Which brings us to the object at the top of this video, and to a man who spent years being paid to tell the public that things like it did not matter. The object caught on camera. The footage was shot in daylight, from the air, by a pilot flying under a paraglider canopy. His lines and part of his harness sit in the corner of the frame. Below him, farmland and forest run flat to the horizon. He is thousands of feet up. And roughly level with him, holding position in open sky, is a machine. Not a light, not a blur, not a distant dot that can be argued about. The camera pulls in close enough to resolve individual parts. A horizontal arm with blunt cylinders capping both ends. A vertical spine of 2 parallel struts bolted at intervals. Articulated joints. A dark rounded housing at the top that sits uncomfortably like a head. A curved limb hanging from the bottom, angled like something reaching. Now look at what is missing. No wings, no fuselage, no rotor blur, no propeller disc, no exhaust, no contrail, no canopy, and no seat. Nobody in it. Whatever is holding that structure up at that altitude is not visible in a single frame. The obvious answer is that it is hardware, and hardware means somebody built it. The machine joints, the bolt patterns, the symmetry, all of it argues for a drone frame or a camera rig rather than anything exotic. That is a fair reading. The problem is what a rig like that is doing at that altitude, in clear air, with no support platform anywhere in the frame, holding station beside a paraglider long enough to be filmed twice. And this is where the pattern from 1977 comes back, because the footage did not surface as a news story. It surfaced in an independent special report, in the same program as an interview with Nick Pope. Pope is not a believer by trade. He ran the desk at Britain's Ministry of Defense that took public UFO reports, and his position has always been that most of it had ordinary explanations. He is the closest thing this subject has to an official skeptic. He has also said, on the record, what that desk was doing. Witnesses who wrote in got a standard reply, telling them there were probably conventional answers. The line given to Parliament and the press for years was that UFOs were of limited defense interest. Meanwhile, as later released files showed, the Defense Intelligence staff were running studies classified as high as secret UK eyes only. Pope has apologized for those letters. He said it was the line he had to follow while he had the job, which is the whole thing in one sentence. Terry Lovelace was told to sign papers he could not read and never speak to his friend again. The public was told there was nothing to investigate by an office investigating it at the highest classification available. The object over that field is still hanging there in the footage. No agency has ever come forward to say it belonged to them. Terry Lovelace stayed quiet for 40 years, and the one piece of evidence he had walked out of his own leg the week he tried to test it. Then there is that object over the field, in daylight, with nothing holding it up. If you had to explain one of them first, which would you pick, and what do you think it actually is? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.